here.
Hello, hello, everyone.
Yeah, I don't see Mary yet. I know she RSVP'd. Look at that. All the rings. Hi, Gail. Hi, Chris. I see Colorado's in the house, Nevada, Texas. Who are we missing? Oregon? No,
New Mexico.
New Mexico. That's right.
Some of us are from New Mexico.
Okay,
Oh, good.
great.
Hey, this is Randall from Texas. I am going to keep y'all mostly on mute. I've
Okay.
got a party going on in the house with a bunch of like young 20 somethings. So I'm going to sit here and listen and probably I'll chat. I'll maybe type in the chat or something. Okay.
Yeah, we've got a couple interactive points to this, so that's totally great, Randall.
Okay.
All right. Well, let me see. All right, well, let's get going. Hi, everyone. I am Rhonda Bannard, and I'm with Third Act Arizona, coming to you live from the hot spot of the country, Phoenix, Arizona. It's hot not only because of the women's basketball Final Four being played here, but it's hot because of temperatures. We had at least 6 degrees of 100 plus days in Phoenix for the month of March. It's become literally March Madness. Our lows broke records. Spring training games had to be pushed to the evenings. Our
Wow.
hiking trails got closed by the city during the day. There was an air show where hundreds of people had to be treated for extreme heat. And an extreme weather expert says March was the most anomalous month in US history. The only previous record of temperatures like this was in 1910. So I'm a part of Third Act because of our focus on climate change and democracy. And I think our presentation is going to be on point for those things tonight. What I wanted you to do is introduce yourself, where you're coming in from, your city, which, if you're a part of Third Act, and share what records were exceeded in your neck of the woods. So in the chat, share your city, maybe what Third Act you're with. If you are with a Third Act, we invited people outside of Third Act, and any records for heat that have been broken within your city. We gathered here recently in Phoenix in what was called a Third Act convergence, where several Southwest states came together. We got to meet several people on this call, so we thought it would be a good idea to bring everyone together to hear a little bit from the environmental voter projects on the strategic way that we can blend the issue of climate and democracy with what's going on. But that's just the beginning, so keep those introductions coming, and I'm going to throw it over to our fearless leader in Arizona, Betsy Wilkening. Betsy?
There we go. Just a minute here. Okay. All right. Welcome today. As you all fill in our icebreaker, I use that term facetiously. I'm Betsy Wilkening, and I'm the co-facilitator in Tucson, Arizona. And welcome to Third Act Arizona. Welcome to our other Third Act group people, and welcome to all our friends out there that may not quite be a senior yet, but you're working with us to protect our climate and democracy. The icebreaker is kind of funny. Our local TV station every year does an icebreaker contest, and it's for people to predict the day and minute when the ice will break on the Santa Cruz River. Well, the Santa Cruz River only runs through Tucson because we're putting reclaimed water into it right now, so it doesn't run year round and let it all freeze. But it's the day that we reach our first 100-degree day. And this year, they never even had a chance to do this contest. It's the earliest that we've beat the previously held record, which unironically hit in April 11th of 2025. But records aside, we all know that extreme heat has consequences, and they are deadly for many and affect us all. We are living climate change. Today, we're here to learn from the Environmental Voter Project about how we can encourage people who are concerned about the environment and climate to take to the polls in the upcoming election. So before we get there, we're going to ground ourselves in our third act working principles that can sustain and motivate us to keep up this good work. So we're going to be inclusive, boost others, be humble, take care, be kind, back up the youth, be generous, but not to a fault, be accountable, be creative, and remember, we're all in this together. So today we're going to hear from the Environmental Voter Project, and we're very pleased to have Shannon Siegel with us. She's an organizing and field director and has years of experience organizing intersectional coalitions for climate justice and fossil fuel divestment. And she's led multi-stakeholder efforts to create and adopt Mount Holyoke's College First Sustainability Plan and ambitious carbon neutrality goal. She's also researched and implemented a number of community-based projects in Costa Rica and has experience in sustainability planning, environmental education, and grassroots coalition building. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Shannon.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Betsy. Rhonda, love and hate, I guess, the check-in question. I hate that we have to ask it, but that's a really, really good one. Thank you all for having me. I am an elder or a senior in training, if I may be so lucky. And just I'll note, like, as Betsy mentioned, with some of my background in fossil fuel divestment, like Bill McKibben is one of my heroes, and it's so cool. Like, it's a dream come true to be working with all of you at Third Act, and obviously folks at many other organizations that do this amazing work. So from me, thank you all for my generation. It's really very inspiring for me to see all of you and to have the chance to chat with you. And I know I'm not the only expert in the room here. I am coming from, I have a lot of background at the Environmental Voter Project and what we do, but you all are allies with us in the movement. So I don't want this to be a one-way flow of information. Please send your questions in the chat, or hopefully we have plenty of time to go through some questions as well. So I'm going to throw a ton of data at you all because that's what I'm here for, and hopefully open up some conversation and some ideas for you. All right. So I know many of you are maybe a little familiar with the Environmental Voter Project. Bear with me as I go through some quick intro stuff before digging into the data. Just want to make sure everyone's on the same page here. So we do one thing, and we try to do it exceptionally well, and that's turn non-voting environmentalists into consistent voters. I love whoever added in the chat, talk about if you're running for office, we want more environmentalists voting and we want more environmentalists running. Why? Now, this is sometimes really surprising information for me to show to engaged climate activists like yourself. But when we look at exit polling, and this is true when we look at polling ahead of elections, and we ask likely voters what their most important issue is, climate change is not at the top. Now, when EVP, the Environmental Voter Project, first got started 10 years ago in 2016, this number was 2%. By 2018, 2020, it was 4%. Now it's 7%. So we're seeing growth and we're seeing a strong rate of growth. But if you are running for office and you are deciding what you're going to build your platform on, you got to follow the voters, right? You can't get elected if there aren't people voting for you. So if you're running, these are the issues that you're probably going to talk the most about, these issues near at the top, because this is what actual voters are saying is their top issue. But as many of you know, as you engage with folks, the majority of Americans care about climate change. The majority of Americans are even climate alarmed. They want to see climate leadership. What's this gap? At EVP, we have identified that this gap isn't that not enough people care about climate necessarily. The easier issue to figure out is that the people who care about climate are not voting as much as the people that care about other issue groups. That is not super rational. That doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense. But when you compare people who list climate as their top issue to people who have other priority issues like abortion, like the economy, like immigration, like gun rights, climate voters are undervoting. We're sitting out these elections far more than you might think. So this is a problem. Campaigns are typically resource limited. They don't have limitless time and money. So they have to focus their time and energy on people that are going to vote in the type of election that this person is running in, right? If I'm running for city council, I have a list of all the people in my ward or in my city who vote in city council elections. That's public data, not who you vote for, but whether you vote is public data. And you're going to focus that time and money on the people that are reliable at voting in city council elections. Because it's not an efficient use of your time talking to someone at the door, convincing them to vote for you or to agree with you, just for that person to not end up voting anyway. So when politicians are deciding to run or building their platform, they're only polling these likely voters. That's what we're seeing in that first slide. Those polls are almost always built, you can see like the text in the bottom of the screen usually, on people who are considered likely voters, or like in this case, it's an exit poll. Those people who just left the polls, they just voted. We're not talking to the folks that sit out elections. So this is bad news for the environment. Politicians know it's not a winning issue, so they're not leading on it even if they wanted to. Of course, there are exceptions here. I'm making generalizations across the country. We certainly have some incredible climate leaders running and in the office, but not at the volume that we need in order to be taking drastic action on climate. So environmentalists aren't voting. That's where EVP comes in. That's our singular focus. This is real. This is a real number. 11.2 million registered voters, registered eligible voters, who say climate is their top priority, did not vote in the 2024 general election. This is across the whole country, according to our voter file analysis and projections. 11.2 million. You might know a few of them, you might not, but this is the size of our problem. What does that mean? Like, what's the scale of that? Here we go. I should have all this highlighted. This is not me ignoring Colorado or New Mexico or Texas. This is just some of our more emblematic like numbers here. When we are looking at the Trump margin of victory in 2024, across the board in swing states, the non-voting environmentalists who did not vote in 2024, registered to vote, eligible to vote, self-identify as climate or environment being their top issue, in all 5 of these cases is much greater than the Trump margin of victory. Now, the Environmental Voter Project is a nonpartisan organization. We don't tell people who to vote for. We don't endorse candidates. We don't know who, no campaign knows who someone votes for. That's secret, right? But this is just showing you how significant these numbers are, right? These are numbers that make or break elections. These are numbers that if we added 270,000 voters to the electorate overnight in Arizona, every politician would pay attention to those people. Even Nevada, like this is a much tighter than these other states, but Nevada's population is smaller, right? Like it's still almost double. It's almost double. So how do we actually do anything about that? We're good at identifying the issue, and I think we're pretty good at finding a solution as well. So happy to answer questions on this as well, but I'll kind of breeze through it. First, we identify these people. I'll talk a little bit more on that in a minute, but we use data analytics and predictive modeling. It's very similar to what campaigns are using as well to decide like who might be a likely supporter. So we know these people by name and street address. And then we only focus on the people that have a track record of not voting in the type of election that we're mobilizing voters for. So in this case, in 2026, we are only talking to registered to vote environmentalists who don't have a track record of voting in midterms. Some of these people do vote in presidentials, and they consider themselves really good voters because they vote every 4 years, but they're not voting in whatever election we're talking to them about, or at least they're not voting until we talk to them. So we use voter turnout messaging that relies on behavioral science to reach these voters in a whole bunch of different methods. From the volunteer side, that includes canvassing, phone banking, and postcards. And then on a staff side, we also send direct mail, so non-volunteer written mail, and digital ads to target these voters ahead of every single election that they have. And I seriously mean every single election, specials, small districts, school boards, soil districts in Colorado, fire districts, like anytime a person has an opportunity to vote, we're going to help them vote. Part of that is because I think, we believe every election is important. We believe we want climate leaders across the board. But the other part of it is habit reinforcement. So I can't effectively change your behavior if I only talk to you every 2 or 4 years. Just like I can't say I have a habit of going to the gym if I'm only doing it once every 2 or 4 years, right? It's not really a habit, it's something you're doing sporadically. When we talk to these voters before every election, we're building that habit. We're making it like, there's an election coming up, you got to vote. Here's the next election, you got to vote. It's something that they start doing. And that helps us change the electorate over time. So we're not focusing on singular elections. Now, we know objectively some elections are higher stakes than others, but we are relentless at building this block over time so that these folks are voting at all levels, not just in the quote unquote important elections. How do we do this predictive analytics? So I'm going to do my best to explain. And again, I'm happy to dig in more if folks have questions. But the process here can be narrowed down to these 5 steps. First, we run large-scale surveys, or we work with data analytics professionals here who this is their whole job. We run these large-scale surveys in every single one of the states we do voter contact, which is 21 states. And we ask voters, registered voters, here's the top issues in the country today. What's the most important to you when you vote? Very specific, narrow question here. So very similar to like that exit poll list you saw at the beginning. Then we look at all the folks that responded with either climate change or clean air, clean water, and the environment. That's the language that we use because we know some folks are maybe a little afraid to say the word climate change, or it's not popular, or they're more motivated by the environmental side than the climate side. So we ask for both. We get all the folks that say climate or environment, and we look at the thousands of consumer and behavioral data points that are appended to each voter in the voter file. Now, this is public data. It's the same information that's used when you get a targeted advertisement online, or even throwing it back more old school, even when you get an insurance quote. So it includes data like, are you registered as driving a certain type of car? Are you a homeowner or a renter? Are there children in your house? Do you live in a suburb, a rural area, or an urban area? Are you a member of a professional organization? All sorts of kind of what on their own are each random pieces of data. But we have such large groups of people that we can identify patterns and correlations of these data points to build a statistical model that can then be applied out to people who didn't answer our survey. So that allows us to assign each registered voter in each of our states a 0 to 100 score based on how likely they are to prioritize climate or the environment when they vote. Last step here. This is the important one, or one of the important ones, right? We don't just have you contact every single person who's a climate or environmental priority person in your state. We remove all the people that have a reliable voting record. I don't need to have you call up someone who has never missed an election in 30 years. They're already probably going to do it whether you talk to them or not. Instead, you are going to focus on the folks that we know care about climate. We know they're on our team. We just have to make sure they vote. So this model is different in each state because an environmentalist in Tucson, Arizona might have different characteristics than an environmentalist in Somerville, Massachusetts. So it's state specific, and it's also not prescriptive. I don't say because this voter drives a Tesla, they must be an environmentalist because that's an electric car. We're not making any of those judgment calls. We're just looking at the data points that people who self-identify as environmentalists have in common. And then we just do an aggressive voter turnout campaign. So I already mentioned the volunteer side. I'll talk to you all about those opportunities. The staff side, digital ads and direct mail, these are entirely dependent on funding. These are kind of expensive, but we put voter mobilization dollars to work right away to digital ads, direct mail, paying for server time for our calls, paying for postcards. And we use proven voter turnout messaging. So you'll notice we actually don't talk about the environment at all. Feels counterintuitive, but we know these people care about climate. If they thought that caring about climate was enough for them to vote, they would already be doing it. Instead, we use the basic behavioral science that's proven time and time again at getting people to vote. It's this peer pressure and this social pressure. It brings us back to the playground a little bit. All of your neighbors are voting in midterms. Don't be the only one on your block not to vote. Or I talk to a person on the phone. They feel a little bit of pressure to tell me they're going to vote because they know they're a little embarrassed by not voting. They say, I'm going to vote. We call them back closer to the election. We say, hey, it looks like you haven't voted yet. Make sure you turn out and vote. Election date is this time. Do you need any information? So we test this and we report it back to you. So we're not just going off guesses or going off our gut. We're running randomized controlled trials here. And we don't do endorsements. We don't tell people who to vote for. Persuasion messaging is not effective with low propensity voters. So people who are considered unlikely to vote, it just doesn't work. So we're just using this behavioral science to get them to vote. And then when they become a consistent voter, they're primed to receive the endorsement and persuasion information from campaigns and other organizations that will start contacting them. So we are talking to voters in all 21 of these states that are in dark green, and we did 458 elections in 2025. That's an odd year. It's not an off year, though, for us. So then this means that we are able to measure our voter turnout results every single year. So 2021, 2022, 3, 4. We're almost done getting voter file updates for 2025. We expect to be sharing that information sometime in April. We're waiting on a couple more states. But these are randomized controlled trials. So what this means is that we have a treatment group who you will contact or we contact, and a control group of similar voters who we don't contact. And then we measure the turnout rates of the people who heard from us and the people who we didn't to show us statistically significant impacts on turnout. So what this means is that we are 95% or more, that's a real number, 95% or more confident that these results are not due to random chance, that they are exclusively due to our voter contact. So you can see statewide elections, congressional elections, that's what we're going to be looking at this year. We have the potential to make huge impacts. Some of these numbers feel small, but in these races, things get pretty tight. So what that means is we measure our voter impact over time. And we stop contacting people when they become good voters. They graduate. They don't have to hear from you. They don't have to hear from me anymore. They're instead hearing from campaigns and from, folks running for office. So far, we have graduated 2.2 million people, and we're not done, right? We saw that 11.4 million or 11.3 didn't vote in the 2024 general. We have a long way to go, but we're getting there. So we've contacted now about 12.8 million unique people, graduated about 2.2 million of them. And I invite you all now to take a peek at your state. I think most of you are in one of our target states. You can see, like Arizona, we've graduated over 117 million people who are now consistent climate voters. And I'll share a link to our website as well that has this in more detail. This year, we're targeting 3.4 million people across our 21 states. So that's a lot of folks, a lot of time on the phones, a lot of time going door to door and sending mail. I'm gonna populate these pretty quickly. I've put in green, I think, all the states where we have folks here today. So you can check for your state: Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Texas. Texas is the real giant here. You can see it is actually the largest of all the states that we're contacting this year, which is even exceeding New York. So we have a ton of voters to talk to. You will not run out. I'm not going to have time to dig into all of those states right now, but I just wanted to show you kind of some additional context for these numbers in a few of these states. So in the last midterm election in Arizona, there was a 17,116 voter margin in the gubernatorial. We're targeting this year almost 93,000 people in Arizona. If even a fraction of those folks showed up, they have the power to determine elections easily. And even when we narrow down to specific districts, like in the 2024 presidential in Arizona 6, 10,000, we got 21,000 targets in that district this year. So if you're looking at the 2028 presidential race, the most time and energy and money efficient thing you can do is turn those folks into voters now for the midterms. Because if they're voting in the midterms, it's very unlikely that they're going to sit out the presidential. All right, Nevada, numbers get even tighter. In the 2022 gubernatorial in Nevada, about 15,000 vote margin, 43,638 targets in 2026, almost 3 times what we're looking at. Then I'll just show you one more here with Colorado. Colorado as a whole, maybe slightly less interesting than maybe Arizona or Nevada. But in 2022, when we look at Colorado District 3, I had to triple check this number. But this is Lauren Boebert's district, 546 voter vote margin. I've got 13,327 people identified by name and street address. We have a phone number for most of them. We have an IP address for most of them. We just need a comparatively small proportion of these folks to vote to be able to determine elections. So we don't do this by getting started in October of even years. We are contacting voters literally all year, every year. Now, we're not talking to the same voters all year, every year, because I'm not going to talk to a voter if they don't have an election coming up. I'm not going to waste that call. So you will see New Mexico is not listed here. That's not because we're not doing New Mexico, just because that voter contact is going to start a little bit later in the year. There is not an election coming up in this immediate future. But January to March is almost behind us. We have mobilized voters in Texas Senate District 9, Pima County, Arizona, and across the state of Texas ahead of the March primary. This is an example here, Pima County, Arizona. I know many of you live there. There was a public transit funding ballot measure. This is totally the kind of election that we need environmentalists voting in. Now, we don't do endorsements, but I think we did a pretty good job getting voters out for that election, from what I've heard. And it means we are helping these voters exercise their voting muscle before they're going to be voting again in July for the primary, and then obviously again for the November general. In April, so starting later this month, we have a really cool campaign coming up where we are going to call voters on the inactive voter list in Nevada and encourage them to either, like if they've moved and that's why they're on the inactive voter list, update their voter registration. So for wherever they live now, or if they just haven't voted in a couple election cycles and that's why they're on the inactive list, we're going to encourage them to update their registration information to ensure that they get a ballot in the mail. Because we know in states that do it, Colorado, I'm looking at you, when voters get a ballot mailed to them, they're much more likely to return it. So we're doing that in April so that we can then mobilize voters, not just inactive voters, but all of our voters in May in Nevada ahead of the June primary. So if we talk to them in April, they update that registration information. They're then going to get their ballot in May and vote it in time for June. We're also going to be talking to our Arizona voters again in June ahead of the July primary. And we're also going to be doing work in Colorado. So I want to flag for Colorado, we are running a robust digital ad experiment that we're really excited about. It means we're not going to do volunteer calling though, because we need to make sure we can measure the digital ads. Then in July, we're going to be back in Arizona still ahead of the primary. Now the date has changed. So this is just literally between now and July. And then it's, bike pedal to the metal from August through November and then beyond. Like when there's runoffs, when there's specials, all sorts of things, we are continuing to contact these voters at the end of November and December, January. We take no days off. We talk to voters every single day, all year, when they can act and have an election coming up. So April starts tomorrow. I can't believe it. It's not a joke. We have all sorts of opportunities for you. Now, you will see these elections specifically, like what we have on the calendar, is not necessarily into your target state of interest. That's again because we want to preserve your time and energy. We only want you to talk to a voter when that voter can hang up the phone and immediately take action. If you haven't phone banked before, or if you haven't phone banked with us before, an excellent way for you to make sure you're maximizing your time and energy in your target state is to get trained earlier for a different campaign, get some practice on the dialer so that once, Arizona or Nevada or Colorado or New Mexico or Texas is up, you can spend the entire phone bank doing calls and you don't have to take the time to get trained. Obviously, it's Earth Month, so we have phone banks every day during that week. And I know we have many third actors here. I wanted to flag that Bill McKibben will be joining our phone bank a week from today, next Tuesday on the 7th. So I hope that you join us. It would be a cool opportunity to hear from him. And then we'll have a training as well. And we're partnering with Elders Climate Action and Elders for Sound Democracy as well. So we're going to have a big Elders Power phone bank. I'm very excited for our Tuesday phone banks. I shouldn't play favorites, but they consistently knock out the best numbers of calls. So you will be joining a very winning team if you join us on Tuesday. Here is that Bill McKibben phone bank. If you'd like right now to scan a QR code, you can be brought straight to the sign up link for that, but you'll also be getting these links after, so no stress. So mobilize voters with us in 2026. If you don't want to mobilize voters with EVP, mobilize voters with another organization. Like we have no time to waste. We really have to get to work. I can promise as our organizing and field director, if you join us with EVP or like partnered with Third Act in EVP, it's going to be easier than you think. It's going to be impactful. And we have opportunities every day to work with your schedule. So I am extremely proud that I can tell you with confidence that I'm only asking you to do things that we have research to back up and that we will report back to you on the results of. I am not asking you to spend your time on anything that I don't think is going to make a difference just because I know you might want to do it or it might be fun. We really take that seriously, that you have limited time and energy and money, and we want to make sure that we are maximizing it. So don't wait till November. You all are already here right now on March 31st. I know you're ready to go. So you'll get these links. Again, I would love for you to join us at EVP, especially in our partnership with Third Act. If you're more inspired to go elsewhere, do that. Like, we don't let perfection be the enemy of the good here. So if you want to get involved to get trained, we have phone banks all the time. That's our main opportunity that we have on a regular basis. And then we send out emails when we have postcard campaigns open. We would, of course, appreciate a donation. But if you want to do something specific with your group, or like if this cohort that's on a call right now wants to do a special phone bank for the Nevada inactive voters list or the Arizona state primary, I would be thrilled to train you to lead phone banks as a group. You don't just have to join the ones on our website. We have opportunities for you to work your own schedule or volunteer your own schedule and work specifically with the folks that you already know. So you can take down my email. I'm sure Rhonda and Betsy can also share it with you. It's easy, Shannon at environmentalvoter.org, and we can work out something that works for you and your schedule. I know that was fast. I know I threw a lot at you.
No, it's great. We wanted to open it up so people can ask questions to Shannon, and then after she's done answering a few questions, we're going to pose questions to you about what this has you thinking about as far as your strategy and messaging. So who's got a question for Shannon? Do
I will
you
say I see one from Randall, but in the chat that I'll jump in on when folks are thinking.
Okay, go for it.
How do we decide the districts and elections? Very good question. We will contact voters in any election that they have, with the caveat of we don't have unlimited time and money. I wish we did. If all of you start volunteering with us, maybe that will change. We'll have more capacity. But we will sometimes elect to do more. So like we might in Virginia right now in the redistricting election, we are doing calls, canvassing, digital ads, and direct mail, because that's like such a critically important election. We have so many voters there. In other races, we might do a lighter touch. And typically that just has to do with our money, our capacity, and to some extent how consequential the election is likely to be. Yeah, I think Diane, I see your hand up.
Diane?
Yeah,
And then Chris.
I have made calls with EVP, and I've knocked on doors based on EVP lists, and I found that most of those voters are young in their 20s, and it's hard to reach them. I yeah, I don't know if I'm an outlier, but I just didn't reach that many people, either on the phone or on knocking the door. Is there a
Yeah.
better way of doing this?
Very good question. So what I will say is not every voter is equally reachable, period, unfortunately. So we don't have a good phone number for everyone. We oddly enough don't have a good address for everyone. Like we know their registered voting address, but that's not always a door you can knock. That might be they're in a big apartment building or something. So we think that our multi-pronged approach is important, because a voter you reach going door to door just might not be easily reachable with any of our other methods. So what that means is in a particular shift, it might feel like, okay, I'm only talking to like 3 people in my hour and a half canvassing shift. But those 3 people might have only been able to be reached by you canvassing them. Or when we're calling voters, it can be a similar thing. So for calls, I will say if you joined us in 2024 or before, we had a different program. We're now in Scale to Win, which is, I think, a much more user-friendly and efficient setup. Our averages right now are about 11 voter conversations per 90-minute shift. So those are pretty good numbers. I mean, that's very efficient, more than I've seen in many other organizations, but it does mean you have some tougher conversations or shifts where you're just not that lucky. But even those things being the case, the times you reach someone are so effective. Like a phone call or in a door-to-door canvas, when you're physically talking to someone, those impact rates are pretty unmatched. in any other form of voter contact. So even though it might be easier to like send mail or a digital ad, it's not quite as impactful. So we layer them all together. And I hope you feel impactful at the end of it, even if you did only speak to a few people.
Chris, and then Eric, and then Charlotte.
Hi there. Thank you. It was a great presentation. I really appreciate it. And I certainly hope we're going to get the slides because, and I'm sure we will. But two questions. One is, do you have any experience working with social media influencing? I
Yeah.
wonder if that's a way to get some of the voters that you were just speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
And also, oh, go ahead. Well, answer that first.
Yeah. So what's interesting at EVP is the people we reach over social media and like in an influencer capacity or on our own social media are actually like that's how we contact volunteers and donors. Our voter contact actually looks very different because it is just this super, super targeted contact. So we do some social media digital ads, but they are targeted like to someone specific, like computer, basically. I know that sounds a little creepy, but it's true in a way that an influencer is much broader. They're going to reach a lot more people, which is still impactful. And we do sometimes have folks reach out to us and we provide messaging guidance because, like, obviously I want EVP voters to vote, but I also just want more people to vote. So we work with a lot of other groups to like help them refine their voter contact messaging. And we imagine that has peripheral effects on our voters. But like that sort of broader contact isn't a core of how we specifically talk to our voters directly.
Okay, and then do you have partnerships with other groups like, say, the Sunrise Movement, or, I hesitate to say indivisible because they're so huge, but, whoever.
Yeah. So I'll say like we do partner with Third Act National as well as some specific chapters
Right.
in 2024 and in 2025. We hosted quite a lot of regular phone banks. Elders Climate Action is a group we've been working with basically since the beginning in 2016. We do a weekly phone bank with them. And beyond that, we are working with a bunch of kind of local chapters of various groups. Like I know in Tucson, we worked really closely with what was formerly known as the Tucson Audubon Society. And now I think it's Tucson Bird Alliance. So we've worked with local groups as well as more national organizations to partner. Our main partnership opportunity is what we call our like plug-in field operation. So we plug into these other strong volunteer bases like you all have at Third Act, and then we provide all the voter contact infrastructure. We do the targeting, we set up the list, we do the research on the elections, and then you use your people power, or these other groups use their volunteer power to mobilize all sorts of extra voters. So that's typically how the partnerships go, but that's not the only way.
So if we had a partnership with somebody, I'm not targeting anyone specific now, but it's an area in the elections that we're sort of investigating.
Yeah, so it could be up to you or up to the group. We have some folks, like in Louisiana, we work with League of Women Voters a little bit, and they just want to do Louisiana voter contact. So when we have Louisiana things come up, we tell them, and then we set up those specific events. With groups that have a wider focus, we might pick something that's like once a month or once a week. They're hosting an event, and then we let them know, okay, Arizona's our priority this week, or New Jersey's our priority this week. And then they just do whatever we have at that time. Because there's always something. Like right today, we have Anchorage, Alaska, state of Virginia, and New Jersey CD11. We have folks in all three of those, or calling into all three of those spots right now.
Great, thanks. I'm sure, Chris, you can talk more with Shannon offline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Charlotte, and then there's a couple in the chat.
Thanks. I'm just curious. I guess you'll get to this. Do you have a schedule already of when we just start? And then I'm a volunteer coordinator, so I want to get as many people to these events. Is that the plan?
Yeah, I love that question. That's my favorite type of question. So we have our schedule up right now through the end of April. In about 2 weeks, we should have May and June. And for like volunteer leaders like yourself, I do have a calendar that's not as like nice looking, but it's a spreadsheet projected out through the fall. So I'd be happy to, it's not something we like post publicly because sometimes things shift a little bit. Like, you know, in Arizona, the primary election changed and we had to make some shifts there. But I'd be happy if you have specific, like if you really want to do Nevada or if you really want to always do a certain date or time, reach out to me and I can get you that calendar and we can talk about what cadence might work.
Okay,
So I
thanks.
shared in the chat our events page right now, which goes through the end of April, but that link will continue to be updated.
Great.
Yeah.
Eric?
Thank you so much. And I'll keep this brief because I know we're getting along here. But hey, great presentation. I became aware of y'all several cycles ago when I attended one of your debriefs post-election. Was blown away by the quality of your data. For those of you who caught it in the chat, my association is that I'm with the Pima County Democratic Party, so I'm clearly in party structure and behind campaigns. And I do want to put my finger on one thing that you mentioned. You all serve in a space that almost nobody else does with the kind of fervor and consistency of program that you do. And it's extremely important work. I'm thrilled to direct people your way. When people say, what can we do different? I think that supporting your efforts in particular is one of those things. I will definitely be following up with you after the cycle. Keep up the good work, y'all.
Thank you so
Very
much, Eric.
wonderful.
That is a very sweet comment. I really appreciate that. This is why we're doing it.
Great endorsement. Stephanie, one of our candidates. You're on mute, my friend.
Thought I hit it. Yeah, thanks, Rhonda. Shannon, yeah, very great presentation. The numbers are, just to see that in black and white is amazing. So yeah, I'm a climate activist. I'm an engineer. I've been involved in this for several years and I decided to run for office. So how do candidates like me become engaged in this so that you're aware? Because like you mentioned, we don't always we don't put that up front and center. It's kind of buried in my talk about energy and clean energy a bit, but yeah, how do I become engaged with this?
Yeah, very good question. So, I'll say like we don't endorse. I know you heard that. I know you're not asking that, but I gotta say it. But my comment, and this would be to any candidate, is you're definitely not wrong for targeting likely voters. You got to do it. That's what makes sense. My recommendation would be if you see someone on your walk list or your talk list or someone who is not a reliable voter, the best information to give them is just voting information. Get out the vote information and not try to go a persuasion route. We often want to do both, but all our data really shows that for these low propensity voters, let's just get them out to vote and encourage them to vote. And that's, that longer term approach. The other piece that I would say for candidates, I mean, part of what we have the privilege of doing at EVP as a non-candidate organization is that we can look beyond one election cycle. I know many voters are feeling a little bit disillusioned, especially in certain swing states of like, someone comes in and they parachute in and like they talk to us about this election and then they abandon us. So I think the other way that candidates can be involved or try to stay involved is think about how can you leverage your list of volunteers beyond the election cycle, right? Like I would love to ask you to have your volunteers phone bank with us. That might not be your right move for your campaign, but if you have this engaged group of people, regardless of whether you win or lose your election, let's keep them going on this work and not just like ride the high or feel disillusioned with the low, and keep mobilizing these voters year round because it's only going to benefit climate candidates long term.
Well, I definitely. We're not anybody working in climate change isn't a blip in time. It's a really long-term issue. So I think that's good advice. But you educate? You don't educate at all then on, it's really just getting them to vote. You don't say, here's what's going on in the SRP election, for example.
Right.
Any specific.
Yeah. So we just educate them to vote. In like, for example, a good example is the Pima County ballot proposition race that happened, that the ballot measures were mostly about public transit funding. If someone said, "What is this election?" we would say there's these two ballot propositions, they have to do with public transit funding. So when there is some type of climate, like very direct climate angle, we will tell voters who ask, but we will not say, like, therefore you should vote yes. So we don't do any specific education on it. But our hope is that there are other great organizations in this space, Sierra Club, League of Conservation Voters, that do an excellent job at that. So not always at every level of race. We would love to see them doing work in those smaller races as well. But we think that we don't need to reinvent the wheel on it, that they do a pretty good job there. So that then once our voters are voting consistently, they basically get handed off like to these other organizations to pick up the baton.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you,
thanks
Stephanie.
to both of you. Shannon, you were great. And this meeting was always set up to be longer than an hour. So hopefully some of you can hang because I wanted feedback from everyone. We sort of want to workshop what we just heard from Shannon and EVP into like how we can take action. So obviously she laid out all the different ways that you can engage with EVP. I've done phone banking with EVP and I absolutely will do it again. But one of the questions that I wanted to ask, and Shannon, you're welcome to stay or move on. And Nancy, I see your question. Is it a quick one before we let Shannon go?
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you use the same kind of dialer that Lead Locally does? It just was so easy to use, a phone and an iPad or something, it was
Yeah,
really great.
good question. I'm not sure if we're on the exact same one. We are on one called Scale to Win, which is very popular. So I wouldn't be surprised if Lead Locally is using the same one, but it's the same style. So it's what's called predictive dialing, where you can either call in on your phone and look at your computer or tablet screen, or you can do it all from your computer or tablet. And the system dials the voters for you, and you only get connected when people pick up the phone. So you don't have to deal with like dialing the number, waiting for the phone to ring, going to the next one. It just connects you when people pick up. So typically during one of our phone banks, folks are getting a pickup about every minute or so, usually a little bit less.
Thanks. Great job, Shannon. Thank you.
So the first question for all of you is this: how has this presentation on climate voters changed how you look at what you can do? You can put it in the chat. You can just jump on. How has it changed what you might do? Anybody? Pondering? Robert?
Yeah, I'll just say I really enjoyed the statistics that Shannon put forth. I have experience in the last election, in the presidential election, and was very disheartened both by my during the phone banking, my inability to reach supposedly Democrats, people who would be interested in hearing what I had to say. It was very disheartening, and it sounds like the way that you analyze these things, the analytics are give you a better result. That you're going to see someone who is registered to vote but hasn't voted. I think that's what you said, and that those people. I'm not clear on how you've identified that they have environmental concerns and would be motivated to think about that as a high-level problem. But I'd love to try it, see what happens, because I've enjoyed the process, but as I said, been disheartened by the experience and certainly disheartened by the election results.
Thanks, Robert. I love what Nancy said about it shows that the gap on climate voters is doable, and that's definitely how I feel. So there were some great comments in the chat. So hopefully you all are looking at that. I'm going to share some of the things that it makes me think about. And I would say it made me make calls on the SRP election because it's a very focused election, posting about utilizing EVP. And talking with candidates about the difference of the potential voters that turn out that are climate first voters. So educating candidates about the importance of maybe infusing a little bit of climate change. To me, I personally believe that climate change is an affordability issue. We can talk about energy costs, food costs, all the things relating to fuel, the war, et cetera, et cetera. So there definitely is a connection between those things. And the second question that I'd love to ask you, and then we'll throw it back to Betsy to finish up our meeting, and that is, how might you talk to voters and knock doors differently? How might you talk to voters and knock doors differently? Anybody want to weigh in?
I would say, excuse me for just jumping in here, Rhonda, but I think it's really surprising. I didn't realize that really you just have to get people to vote. You don't have to go convince them of anything. You don't have to talk about climate. You just have to get them to vote and just encourage them to vote. Like Shannon said, peer pressure. I didn't realize that was so strong.
And it is, and I even get, for those of you who live in the SRP area, like I get notices cards that show how my energy usage compares to my neighbors. And it's definitely almost becomes like this contest to make sure I'm the lowest. So that's one way. Stephanie.
Yeah, I think I definitely realized as I listened to Shannon that it will change how I talk with people. And for me, I think especially younger people, because I know that is a group that often cares about climate change, but often will get involved in their life and not vote or feel like their vote doesn't matter. And so to be able to quote those numbers about Arizona specific numbers, I think helps me talk to the voters that I already kind of suspect may fit in that category. I wish could have your list, Shannon. I'll admit it.
It is good. I don't blame you.
That's a good
I
list.
do think it's a great strategy, though, to just have, people jump on the EVP call time with some of the East Valley. Stephanie lives in the East Valley of Phoenix, to get those folks on board to understand, the strategy.
Yeah. And now this is not me giving advice to a campaign at all.
I understand.
Like the messages that we use don't just work for climate voters or unlike, any of that. So sometimes I tell folks or I encourage folks, like, join one of our trainings. Obviously, I want you to help mobilize our voters, but it's also, it gives you an idea of how to mobilize more voters. Like, I mean, Rhonda, I'll answer your question a little bit with an embarrassing answer. This is very embarrassing for me. My sister, like a year ago, moved into the same city that I live, and used to live with my parents in a different town. And we're doing a phone campaign that happens to be going into my hometown. Literally last Tuesday, I get a text from my sister, and she says, "Why is the Environmental Voter Project calling me?"
Hello, everybody. I'm famous.
And I was like, oh, shoot, my own sister, who I would have thought knows and is reliable. So what this meant to me, I was like, oh, she's registered in our hometown still. She's been here a year. She hasn't updated her voter registration. I was like, I'm not doing a good enough job. This is my job, and I'm not doing a good enough job. So I think the other piece is like, we can all have our own egos of like, I know what to say and I know what will work. And like, sometimes we're just wrong. So I'm like, well, I literally texted her basically our phone banking script. And I was like, this is why you got to do it. Everyone else is doing it. Aren't you embarrassed? But I was also embarrassed. So that's my response here too. None of us actually probably have all voters in our orbit. There's folks we can talk to.
Great. Any other comments relating to that? Otherwise, I'm going to thank Shannon again and throw it back to Betsy to kind of wrap up our meeting. But that gives you some food for thought to go back with your own third acts or in your groups, or, connect with us too, and see how we can workshop with this new knowledge. Betsy?
Thank you. That was great, Shannon. I did have one quick question, Shannon. Are you on college campuses at all, or since you're not like championing a certain candidate or?
Yeah. So we do sometimes partner with orgs on college campuses when we do door-to-door canvassing, especially because there's often like a rich target of like young non-voters around college campuses, and these are folks that can like actually reach those other voters. And then sometimes we've partnered with college organizations to do these, phone banks and whatnot, but usually partnering more on a volunteer side than a voter side. Unfortunately, when we've tried to do more targeted outreach on campuses, we found the voter registration information is not always that updated. Like it's how these folks are legally registered, but so many have graduated or don't live there or, have moved to the next place over. So we aren't focusing tons of our mobilization energy there, but these are folks that are roped into our call lists and our mail lists and all sorts of things there. But digital ads tend to work the best because I can reach
Great,
you on
thanks.
your computer wherever you happen to be.
Yep, thank you. All right, let me share my screen here. Oops. Let's go to share. And there we go. So thank you all for coming tonight, and especially you that came much later than we are in Arizona. We really appreciate it. We're just going to wrap up with a few Arizona events. And so of those of you that are not local in Arizona want to head out, you're welcome to head out too. We have a few activities coming up. One of them that we have up there is a survey that we sent out. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can put this stuff in the chat for you with all the links. And what this survey is going to do for us oh, I got the wrong stuff. Oh, yep, there it is. Okay. What the survey will do for us is help us understand in Arizona what you want to work on, how you want to help us out with Third Act Arizona. And so the survey is a real quick 2-minute survey. If you can get a chance to do that, I just put the link in the chat. Then a reminder for those of you in the Phoenix area, the SRP election is happening now. If you have a mail-in ballot, please take it. I think they don't even want you to mail it anymore. I think they want you to drop it off at SRP headquarters. And if you didn't get a mail-in ballot and you're qualified, please go in person and vote. The links that I have there have a link to our website that shows you how to see if you're eligible to vote in that election. And then ACC, Tucson Electric Power rate case is coming up. We have one tomorrow, and there's going to be some people from Sierra Club out front and beforehand. This is in 400 West Congress with some signs out there. If you want to call in and let them know about the rate increase, there's April 1st. There's also the 7th, which is only phone in, and then 22nd in person again in Tucson. And lastly, the APS rate case. There's one more day to let them know that they shouldn't raise your rates 14%. And then, Vince, are you still on the call and talk about this event that we have in Tucson? Maybe he
Hello,
left.
yes, I am.
Oh, there you are. Great.
You can even see me for a minute. Yes, the Climate Futures Film Fest is a film festival of short films. There are 10 of them describing various aspects of climate change, climate justice, and impact. So it's a broad range of films, all of which have been curated by our staff person, I forget who. But anyway, I'm cooperating with them. And if you have trouble with the QR code on the screen or anything like that, I just put a long link into the chat for the festival. You may have to cut and paste that to make it work. I had some trouble with the QR code, but now have it working for me. So please contact me. I can put in my email if you have trouble and you want to come. We are taking RSVPs because we want to have an idea how many people are there in order to know which room to put it in. All right?
All right, thanks, Vince. So that's going on. And oh, let's see here. The last thing I want to say is just thank you for coming tonight and having this wonderful conversation with everyone. And we would love to see you out there and helping us with everything that we're trying to get done with Third Act Arizona.
And we're going to have a holy conversation in April, I hope. A holy climate conversation in April. So stay tuned for that.
Can't wait. Now, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. We'll stay online a minute if anybody had anything else they wanted to share.
Like I put in the chat, I want to gather some folks for, one day around Earth Week in the Phoenix area. So third actors and others who are not part of this, just climate and democracy kinds of folks. Let me know if you want to kind of pull something together. Super simple.